I don't know where the noon come from. He fall in without any question. Pick up the pan, we boil the ham, and one time he start to jam. My Jeffrey, oh, get up. Well, you were here, the neighbor come crowing. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, live it. I hope you know it's white oak a drinking. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, wait up. Time to put some smoke in your kitchen. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, live it. Madam Jeffrey, oh, wake up. I say it's only white oak be drinking, oh, girl. From Tobago, Christmas they reach in front meadow with a box piece and a quattro, a violin and a banjo. They say they always had a plan to give me family a parang. They wake up my mommy right away when they ring out with this love way. My Jeffrey, oh, get up. Hey, like you are here, the neighbor come crowing. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, time to put some smoke in your kitchen, oh girl. Madam Jeffrey, oh, wait up. I hope you know it's white oak a drinking, oh girl. Madam Jeffrey, oh, get up. Yeah. Mommy put coffee on the fire, encouraging them to stay a little longer. Ham and bread on the table. Why don't she pull out a bottle? The music went in my neighbor head. He pulled the old sax below his bed. Come across and join the bacchanal. They wouldn't stop singing at all. My Jeffrey, oh, get up. Hey, you were here, the neighbor come crowing. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, get up, get up, get up. My Jeffrey, oh, wake up. Time to put some smoke in your kitchen, oh, girl. Madam Jeffrey, oh, wake up. I hope you know it white oak we taking, oh, girl. Moving to and fro, they never hear parang some sweet so. And them boys from Tobago getting on with the land too. I don't know where the noon come from. He fall in without any question. Pick up the pan, we boil the ham, and one time he start to jam. My Jeffrey, oh, get up. Well, you were here, the neighbor come crowing. Oh, girl, Madam Jeffrey, oh, live it. I hope you know it's white oak a drink. drinking, oh girl. Madam Jeffrey, oh, wake up. Time to put some smoke in your kitchen, oh girl. Madam Jeffrey, oh, lady. Madam Jeffrey, oh, wake up. I say it's only white don't be drinking, oh girl. Yeah. This Christmas gonna be different, all you best take this from me. This year I'm spending Christmas with my Indian family. Me Saruba and Mausi, Hulsi and Shinani. We have a parent group start practicing already. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Amore, more, 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 lele landalal. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Amore, more, 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 lele landalal. It go be no ham, no pasta neither turkey. Curry, duck and dal, come and fowl and roti. Knocking with a block, we do like and dantal. Wishing Merry Christmas and having a ball. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Amore, more, 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 lele landalal. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Oh Betty, more, 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 lele landalal. I'm going down Pinal to check out Mike and Golin. I must get giraffe pork. When I pass by Manning, I'm checking out Pandy. Hear what he have to say. I know he like the chunky, like why I pass him there. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Oh Betty, more, 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 lele landalal. Daddy I'm the lele and lele landalal. Amore, more, 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 lele landalal. Put some jira in this thing, man.
Studiously arrived at did not prevent some of my colleagues in this House and some elements in the media from continuing to accuse the government of Trinidad and Tobago of breaching the constitutional rights of citizens. To this accusation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government pleads not guilty.
Amore
This was no act of God or mere unlucky accident. All the money that has been expended on the process so far, much more is almost certain to be spent before the families will see a single dime or dollar. This was no act of God or mere unlucky accident. All the money that has been expended on the process so far, much more is almost certain to be spent before the families will see a single dime or dollar in compensation. It will not sit well with everybody. There may be those who will be disappointed. There may be those who will be outraged. And there may be those who will wish to challenge it. All they can do is to give it to everybody or nobody.
On February 25th, 2022, divers Rishi Nagisa, Kazim Ali Jr., Faisal Kurban, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram were doing maintenance work on a 30-inch underwater pipeline at Parias Berth 6 when they were suddenly sucked into the pipeline. Only Boudram survived. The Commission of Inquiry, he said, cost a total of $15.5 million. And
this was no act of God or mere unlucky accident. All the money that has been expended on the process so far, much more is almost certain to be spent before the families will see a single dime or dollar in compensation. It will not sit well with everybody. There may be those who will be disappointed. There may be those who will be outraged, and there may be those who will wish to challenge it. All they can do is to give it to everybody or nobody.
On February 25th, 2022, divers Rishi Nagisa, Kazim Ali Jr., Faisal Kurban, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram were doing maintenance work on a 30-inch underwater pipeline at Parias Berth 6 when they were suddenly sucked into the pipeline. Only Boudram survived. The Commission of Inquiry, he said, cost a total of $15.5 million. And
this was no act of God or mere unlucky accident. All the money that has been expended on the process so far, much more is almost certain to be spent before the families will see a single dime or dollar in compensation. It will not sit well with everybody. There may be those who will be disappointed. There may be those who will be outraged, and there may be those who will wish to challenge it. All they can do is to give it to everybody or nobody.
On February 25th, 2022, divers Rishi Nagisa, Kazim Ali Jr., Faisal Kurban, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram were doing maintenance work on a 30-inch underwater pipeline at Parias Berth 6 when they were suddenly sucked into the pipeline. Only Boudram survived. The Commission of Inquiry, he said, cost a total of $15.5 million. And
this was no act of God or mere unlucky accident. All the money that has been expended on the process so far, much more is almost certain to be spent before the families will see a single dime or dollar in compensation. It will not sit well with everybody. There may be those who will be disappointed. There may be those who will be outraged, and there may be those who will wish to challenge it. All they can do is to give it to everybody or nobody.
On February 25th, 2020.
Yes, indeed. Of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. I'm certain that you would have, of course, gleaned from the videos that were played prior to my intervention the nature of the discussion tonight. Yes, indeed. But of course, I will take a slightly different slant, but around the same area of discourse, and that is crime and criminality, and the position of the present administration in terms of its frustration, in terms of its attempt to hoodwink and literally gaslight the population, beating them into a narrative consistently projected to suggest that they are about dealing with the problem, but when the acid tests they are put to, it turns out that they renege or they disappear. Let me repeat that. All of the gum bumping by the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security and other ministers working towards, as they call it, a all-of-government approach to crime and criminality. The fact of the matter is that the results, the statistics, the data does not equate with the talk that they talk. So it is platitudinous, what I consider to be, of course, cacophonous babblings. They simply are out of it, and they are talking in that way merely to hold on to power and to hope that tomorrow there will be no 3 murders or 6 murders, as the case may be, because that has become stereotypical. If you miss one day, certainly you expect the other day to have at least 3 murders, as is the case today reported in the various newspapers in this country. And the murders are becoming more and more heinous, much more debilitating and depressing, much more associated with not human beings, but with people with a bestial, evil, wicked, and of course inhumane disposition to commit crimes of that nature. Imagine, we get up this morning and a 8-year-old child died in his bed, but from a stab wound to his neck. You know what I say? I say that we got up this morning hearing that a child died, but with a stab wound to his neck. You know what it takes another human being to be up close and then, of course, delve as such a wound to a child, 8 years sleeping in bed. You know what is that? It is not my child, but I feel for it, as I expect that you will also, if the human nature has not left you, having regard to the barbaric, the heinous, and the ruthless and brutal policies and programs, and of course the bellicose language to accompany, to be in tandem with the realities on the ground by this government. And so we see, and I want to say that I have observed a toning down of the aggressiveness of this government, but never take them for granted. A toning down simply means that they have, of course, reconfigured their position because election is at hand, having regard to the proximity of 2025 to today. Never underestimate these guys. It is about power, so they will, as some of you would call it, engage in situational ethics and self-righteous indignation. We saw it recently in Tobago. Rowley went across there saying that the PNM is on the ascendancy. Why? Capitalizing and telegraphing that because, as is expected, teeth and tongue will clash. I wouldn't say an uproar. I will not use the term either a discontentment, but I will say that the family disagreement within the THA council headed by Farley, the PNM interprets that to mean an opportunity, the political combo that they are. So they see it as that. But every administration will have differences in opinion. How people deal with it is another story. And that could be, of course, evaluated and analyzed, whether it is the right approach, going public, or the wrong approach, staying silent. So there must be a balance. But the fact of the matter is, and of course, the PNM has seen it as a port of call or refuge for their miserable performance over the 21 years before the new THA administration took over office, and the barbaric and evil and pernicious and anti-democratic conduct of the PNM THA prior to the advent of the Farley administration. We must see it for that, and we have a duty and responsibility to identify. You see, it's only when the PNM is not in government, they see government as perfect for others. And therefore, if there is a difference in opinion among, of, let's say, the secretaries or even ministers of government under the UNC, you see, we have enough experience to know their modus operandi, and they will capitalize on that. And it's only the fool, only one that is living in a fool's paradise, who will, of course, take them serious. Because we saw it as well when NAR, when the NR was in government and ANR Robinson was, of course, the prime minister. It was Rowley himself who told the population and Tobago not to accept the port that they have now since Robinson deepened that harbor to accommodate larger vessels. And it was Rowley who said to Tobagonians that there is a duck pond. But the same duck pond, they're swimming in all to today. He has not done, having had 8 years at the steering, 8 years at the helm of our affairs, and of course in particular of Tobago. What that produced is the kicking out of the PNM in Tobago. So extensive and expansive is the disappointment of Tobagonians and the poor performance of Dr. Rowley as a Tobagonian from Tobago, and then get, of course, the illustrious position of Prime Minister, the pinnacle, the zenith of a political power in this country according to our constitution, and then he comes and disappoint. The man is poison. The man is toxic. The man is dangerous. The man is cursed. The man is inhumane. The man is dangerous. The man is, of course, oblivious to the pains, agonies, and of course the challenges of the poor and downtrodden. Otherwise, you will not focus on Sabon painting when you come in. You wouldn't focus on those obsolete colonial buildings called the Magnificent Seven. You wouldn't put Despas where you put them. You will not focus on the renovation of the Red House. You would focus, of course, on providing laptops for the young people. You will focus on, of course, putting in place mechanisms for easy access for employment opportunities, recognizing that over 18 or thereabout 1,000 young people will be leaving formally the secondary system in this country, formally and officially. It will not. So let's not waste time. And let's go straight, of course, to the lines. And Tobago is here. Let me see if I can get it from where I stand. Let me see. All right, good. Just give me a second, caller. Keep on the line. Keep calling. Let me just get right. Good. All right. So let me just answer this now. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yes, good night. And let's call home Tobago.
Yes, my friend. A pleasant good night to you.
Yeah. What if you know the talk about the harbor in Tobago?
Yes.
Because Rowley is a man he really never liked Tobagoan, and that's why Tobagoan really don't like him. Right? I'll tell you something, he talk about duck pond and duck pond and duck pond. But the only problem that Tobago however really have is more area for boating. Right? But naturally, the water is naturally deep because a lot of cruise ships come inside there with ease. And you don't have no problem like we just see that dirty water when you come in the for Spain there by the Caribbean today.
Yes.
You don't see that dirty water at all. Right? You don't ever see that at all. So that area is actually deep enough because I see cruise ship come inside again, and when they come inside, we bound cross over the road. The main road by KFC there.
All right.
Actually almost touching KFC.
Wow.
That will tell you how they did, and if that coming right in, look when they had the fast Galicia, and they talking about how they couldn't dock it by the Caribbean wharf there.
Yeah.
Right, and they had it carried down by the Queen's Wharf to dock. That was coming in starboard with ease. It was coming starboard with ease, so they naturally that area that they dredged, they were rubbing to dig. That area is very deep. Any boat is coming here because I see a cargo boat coming here one time was to drop off equipment for the quarry up in Sunny Park here. And that because the Atlantic Ocean, that piece of sea is the Atlantic Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean really hard it.
Yes.
Right? So I don't understand what you're talking about.
It's politics since then. Since then, yeah. Go ahead.
Damage them due to Tobago. The last of the damage due to Tobago is when they spend 50 million for a PNM campaign in Tobago. When that money was supposed to be for access road. For 8 years now, no access road in Tobago nothing have been done on access road. Because the central government, when Tobago's Assembly apply for the budget and thing, they give them no money for access road. So all the alcohol access road is underdeveloped right now. I have a farm on an access road in us. And the grass on the road is about 10 feet high. Right? The surface on the road actually is road because there is no drainage. For more than 8 years, no drain is being maintained. So the water running in the road. When the rain falls, I have to wait until the water subsides from the road in order to come out to the main road. And then it's about a mile and a quarter from the main road. Right? And that is the space that they are talking about, eh? The road is real bad. And people living inside and they don't care. Nobody cares about it. And that happens since the PNM time. You don't know. You see? And he have $50 million was to do that, and Rowley take it and put it on a PNM campaign. Right?
Yes.
So you see how we go in that to be honest? So I don't like it neither.
That's right. You reciprocate. Yes. You don't like me, I can't like you.
Nobody to be able to pay attention to Rowley. Rowley could be all over today, what we do today, we don't care about Rowley. It's only showing that people care about Rowley.
That is why I'm saying that he must be seen as an alien to us. Yeah.
Yes. So let us finally chat this one and listen.
Yes.
To your speech and him too.
Yes.
Right? So
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Everybody on the chat, have a good night too.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, my friend. Yes, indeed. Well, of course, Tobago is not to be outdone or left out, as you would see. And therefore, let me say formally now a pleasant good night to all and sundry, east, west, north, south, central in Trinidad, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web, a pleasant good day to you. But he is right. And that slush fund for politicking came in various forms, quite apart from that 50, because they seem to want to bribe Tobagonians for votes and for them to stay in power, of course, there. Because they have 2 seats is the next challenge, 2 seats. Tobago East and West as part of the national cadre of seats, because it's 41 in all. So therefore, if 2 is in Tobago, it means, of course, 39 in Trinidad. But the point I'm making about this 50,000 fixation, I talk 50 million, I'm talking about a 50 million fixation. Just before the first election that resulted in the 6-6 tie, there was 50 million allocated to the THA hoteliers for, of course, distribution, because they say even though nobody could have traveled, nobody would have come to Tobago, they give them 50 million still. And after that, and when, of course, he went to the parliament and say, as prime minister, he has a right to break the deadlock. Not that democracy demands it, not that, and I say democracy for the specific reason he didn't consult with, at the time, of course, Afali and they had 6-6. He didn't consult with them to break the deadlock. He unilaterally goes to the parliament and, of course, use his slim majority of only 22 seats, and, of course, say that he has broken the deadlock. And, of course, by that action, the EBC would have known, that would have triggered what they had to do. Quite apart, of course, I can speculate now that there may have been some direct communication, but let's say they know what to do. And of course, they created the additional 3 seats in mainly PNM dominated areas. But the people of Tobago was firm in their position, and they dealt them a mortal political blow. The same thing must happen in Trinidad. Let's go straight, of course, to the lines. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome to the corridor. Yes. Good night. Hey. Yes, certainly I will. Yes, thank you. Yes, Florida. All right. Yes, indeed. So they have this 50 million fixation for Tobago to bribe Tobago. Tobago is about principle. If something is wrong, it is wrong. No money could purchase that away. If something is right, it is right. No money could make any difference to what is right. And Rowley believed because he was given the privilege, it's a privilege, it's an honor to be prime minister and to head, of course, the government of Trinidad and Tobago. But what he has done is utilize it not only to be vindictive, not only to malign, not only to demonstrate his misogynic disposition, hating of women, not, of course, using it to generate bellicose language. I remember very distinctly when Robert Amar, the owner of 104.7, where, of course, he caused his lawyers to write it to TAT, the agency that's responsible for issuance of communications license, and therefore the media houses of Trinidad and Tobago and their existence, because they issue the license. They write on behalf of Rowley saying that I am calling him names and, of course, making accusations that are not supported in facts. Mind you, there is a mechanism for that. Not tackle the license of the institution. You need to go to the court, send me a pre-action protocol letter, go to the court and say, I have defamed you. And on that radio station for all over nearly 5 years, I called Rowley, as I am doing now and continue so to do, a rapist and a pedophile, and they didn't like that. So, of course, they took roundabout a circumlocutive action in order, of course, in other words, to get rid of the pigeon. They decided to get rid of the cub. They mash up the cub. But, of course, little did they know that, of course, you cannot Who God bless, no man curse. And you cannot, of course, get rid of a person like me so easily. So what I've done, whilst I am still on the radio station, after, of course, that turmoil has dissipated, I then formed, of course, and came on this live, and it is now over 600 lives, over 600 lives, 600 nightly programs. I have, of course, manifested over the period when I started to, of course, and decided to reach and to send my message of Rowley being a rapist and a pedophile, where they can't touch me with the longest rod. Can't touch me with the longest rod. I thought it was important, but it just goes to show how politically greedy Rowley is. And as a political kobo, he will use, of course, the resources of the country in this 50 million fixation. Because, as I said, not only was that before the outcome of the 6-6 scenario, but after, another 50 million was given to them. And, of course, a plethora of projects that was also part from their budgetary allocation for that particular year. And what has happened when they would have lost to demonstrate the insincerity, and the Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Sometimes we human beings question, oh Lord, why so long? Oh Lord, this man is obviously and palpably and conspicuously wicked. Why it is that you are making us suffer this long? Well, I can tell you that in the case of Tobago, when he lost the election in spite of his intervention by, of course, using his tenuous majority, undemocratic, unprincipled, and, of course, extended the number of seats in Tobago under spurious and, of course, questionable grounds and circumstance, he then, of course, also provided 50 million in that period, and of course almost emptied the treasury across there, providing at least 2/3. And guess what? Time longer than twine, because after he lost devastatingly in Tobago, and in spite of his illusionary so-called PNM comeback in Tobago, and as some people say today on the Ground Report, He come with a rented crowd. Nobody in Tobago wants to listen to him. So he come, of course, I was not there. I am only regurgitating what I heard. But I am not surprised. But I'm making all that to say, or I'm saying all that to convey to you that, listen, the projects that was being conducted under the prime ministerial auspices and office from Unicut, guess what? They pull back those projects after they lost. They pull it back. So it shows that Rowley was never sincere. It was about trying to bribe the people. And I want to say that has lessons for Trinidad. I want to tell Trinidad, whether you are a sycophant, whether you are an apologist, whether you have residual empathy or sympathy, that this time we are talking about saving Trinidad and Tobago, and as the bigger brother, and as the larger island, and as the place where most of the resources are not only created but, of course, disseminated by virtue of the size of population and the size of land space. You have a duty and responsibility, first and foremost, to get rid of Rowley in Diego Martin West. First of all, he must be a casualty of our return to principle, and an indication that we cannot be bribed. We cannot be bribed. I see that, of course, there are certain indicators to suggest that he is on his way to engage in that same kind of attitude that certainly is not only despicable, but it is inhumane, it is wrong, it is devious, and it is saturated with political political agenda, only to get back in office before the consequential next 5 years. He then, of course, give us harm. He give us wickedness. He gives us pain, agony, and of course distress and oppression. We must, of course, see him for what he is. No longer can he bamboozle the population, especially the African population. And we will deal with something like that, because I am using all of this to introduce the question of crime and criminality and Rowley's conscientiousness and of course confession that he understands the African problem in Trinidad and Tobago. But when he gets the opportunity so to do, he then of course get on as an academic, as opposed to a prime minister whose job it is to ameliorate and to address and to of course render in the past such a behavior, but instead he has encouraged it, just as how he appeared to us to be a corruption buster when he was attacking Manning and attacking, of course, Unicott at the time, and called the Heart. And today, he is now a corruption promoter, when, of course, in his own cabinet, including himself, over 12 recusals, in spite of the procurement legislation that is with us today, eventually, of course, ratified and of course signed off on, but yet still in the cabinet there is a spectacular betrayal of that piece of legislation, because the procurement regulator cannot touch them, because the law says clause 7 they eviscerated, they took out, which would of course monitor what the cabinet is doing, and contracts that would have come out from the cabinet, including of course government to government arrangements. Well, they took that out by a very slim majority, nonetheless a very tenuous majority, a very what I consider to be hairline majority, but nonetheless Rowley without principle absorbed that, and then telling us it is standard and it is not illegal that a cabinet minister will recuse himself from the deliberation and the decision where his or her family, acquaintance, and people who they prefer, and rather matters come before the cabinet. All they have to do is to walk out a room. Oh, that is not just shameful, not just dishonest, not just pretensive, as if you don't know that in human situation, your common sense will tell you, if they are cabinet colleagues, then they could prearrange how they will vote and how and when the particular matter will come before them, and all they have to do, in other words, it is orchestrated, it is theatrics at its best, it is choreographing a scenario, and Rowley knows about it because he gave us the indication when he went to Tobago and explaining, of course, the presence of the acquisition of the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower. He then told Tobagonians that there was a process where the cabinet has the final say, so that the port authority administrators will find the boat, and then of course the matter will engage the permanent secretary. The permanent secretary of that ministry, in this case the Ministry of Works, will then of course write a cabinet note and of course give the minister, and of course both ministers, as we know it so far, both of course Sinanan and the fellow called Hines, who is now the Minister of National Security, both of them we know are either not just incompetent, but it appears that they have a literacy and numeracy problem. So therefore, the permanent secretary will have to write on their behalf, and then they will just present it in the Parliament. They will present it in the cabinet, not the parliament, in the cabinet for a decision as to the acquisition of those boats. Well, Dr. Rowley subsequently, as the Lord guides and the Lord insists, because evil cannot indefinitely be hidden. It cannot be put under a bushel and expect, of course, that it will not manifest itself in total revelation to the people. Well, Rowley went into a JSC, a Joint Select Committee, claiming that for the first time a prime minister goes there because he believes he's smarter than everybody else and he has a vocabulary that is larger than mine. Of course, we know that that is, of course, impossible. But nonetheless, fellas like they will try. Well, he went, of course, to the JSC and he did tell them a different story altogether, indicating not only divine intervention in terms of making him speak the truth, but at the same time showing that a man who, of course, lies consistently doesn't remember his lies. And therefore, when he went there, he said a different story. He told Tobagonians that there was a process, and he explained the process right up to the involvement of the PS. And then, of course, the minister brings the matter to the cabinet. Well, at the GSC, in the same acquisition inquiry of those two boats, the Ocean Flower and the Kobo Star, that is still operating now, the Ocean Flower has disappeared. But the fact of the matter is that he said there that he as Prime Minister gave the port the authority. Listen again. He as Prime Minister gave the port the authority to go ahead and engage, generate a contract for those boats, and afterwards he will seek ratification or confirmation or certification from the cabinet. In other words, he acted as a blasted and unadulterated and brutal and wicked and unconscionable dictator by giving that kind of instruction, and expected that the cabinet will of course respond to his dictates. So it shows that he has a firm control of those elements that he called ministers in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago today, and therefore firmly putting him as a certified and unadulterated, not only misbehavior in public office Prime Minister, not only a criminal in other words, but that he has dictatorial and of course autocratic control of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore those other people in that cabinet are yes men and yes women. And why? Because they are motivated by the willingness of Rowley to take our money and give it to them, 30 pieces of silver, as he tried, of course, to do in Tobago with his fixation of $50 million. So that has failed. That has failed. But just in case you do not accept what I am saying for one reason or another, because people have a denial complex, some have, of course, a further ratification disposition, others wanted to, of course, see other palpable evidence. Well, let's go to Tobago self, and let us, of course, look at Miss Bernie, activist there, a Baptist in her religious position, and of course very active during the course of the elections that led to the 14-1 defeat of the PNM comprehensively. Let's hear what she has to say.
You come in a forum to talk, or you open all your political campaign down in the teapot, and you still have UNC name in your mouth. Like everywhere you go, you had to say something about UNC. Boy, wherever UNC and Kamala Passat do you? Boy, is a stain on you, boy. I'm sorry for you. You had to talk about them till you're dead.
Of course, she's talking about the meeting last week in Tobago, where, of course, Rowley made the most delusionary statement so far he has made, and I mean he has made multiple, but this one where he says that the PNM is on the ascendancy. Of course, he forget that we know we were in Tobago. I was in Tobago when I was looking for him to get a pre-action protocol letter, because I went to Tobago since he wouldn't come to Trinidad, because he was in Tobago for a long time, trying, of course, to win to win the consideration of the Tobagonians. At that time, they were set like a mapapy. You know what I say? I say they were set like a mapapy. The electorate in Tobago was set like a mapapy. So he went there and he ramagé and he told, of course, Tricky Tracy, listen, I am going to, out of the vote of the Prime Minister's office, bring the project to fruition that was a controversy at the time, the zipline project, where they couldn't find the equipment, and but of course people were paid, money were passed, and he said that he will without of course saying that he will first investigate, without saying that he has to be satisfied that everything was above board. He said that he unilaterally will of course use the prime ministerial office and the Prime Minister's influence and the vote of the Prime Minister to bring the zip line, believing that people of Tobago are stupid and that they are not listening, and they will not, of course, maintain their principal position of seeing him as a no good, as a betrayer, as of course an Awi boy that needs to not just shot. And let me explain that shot into the sky on a rocket and get to hell onto another planet. That is the shot I'm talking about. Anybody else who say that I say that Rowley should be shot, well, the shot I'm talking about is to be shot into the atmosphere and out of Earth's orbit and onto another planet. That is how despicable and how alien he is. And of course, I will do that in the context as well of Trinidad, where of course since the Tobagonians don't want him, we too don't want him. And as of course Jack Warner has said in his of course unique and inimitable style, he then tells us that of course Trinidad belongs to Kamala Prasad Bisesa because the country is named Trinidad and Tobago, and of course Tobago belongs to Fali. Fali dominates there. Well, of course, this despicable piece of humanity, I'm talking about Rowley, will remain with the and. So he remains in the Bocas and maybe preferably over the Bocas, so he could generate some kind of terra firma, some kind of earth, some kind of ground on a cloud and live there for the rest of his life. But not before he faces, of course, criminal charges for the evil that he would have done. Of course, blue lights and silver bracelets notwithstanding and awaiting. That being as it may, as I said, Bernie is talking about when he was there, and of course, issued to the Tobagonians, those who are prepared to listen, the small crowd, the senior citizens that would have been there. And of course, sharing his illusion and delusion, he doesn't realize that Tobago gone out of the hands of the PNM in no uncertain terms and in a big spectacular way, not like the 22 seats that he got when, of course, he went into the 2020 election that he stole and manipulated, just as how he tried in Tobago, manipulated. When he went in still with 23 seats and came out with 22, the UNC went in with 18 and came out with 19. That is how this self-destructive he is. And of course, all those who are adhering, all those who are seeing him as some kind of messiah, some kind of mosaic representative, I want to tell them that you had to change your mind and change it dramatically, because he is really the representative of the devil. Let's continue with Mother Bernie.
Because after all these years, that is worse than a tabanka. You can't get over that tabanka there at all from the UNC. Every time you come to go on a political platform, you have to mention the UNC. You have to mention that. Why you have to mention that? Something is wrong. Look at that. The Queen of the Pack, Tracy Davison, Celestine, come out and tell all if all you vote PNM, how many THA jobs will be lost. Listen, people. We are accustomed to them nonsense talk there, because everything that these people tell all you is the opposite. It's not who come is going to take it, it's if they go back, what they're going to do. They're telling all you what they're going to do if they get back in the office. So we now in turn in Tobago have to make sure that they don't go back there. They don't go back there to disrupt the lives of the people, citizens of our island, Tobago, and to suffer with family to get something to eat and drink. We have to make sure that they ain't go back there. It's the same thing the cult leader in Trinidad is stand up and say. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is not closing down Petrotrin. When he done, he closed down Petrotrin, sent home so much workers. I seen on the papers the other day where a man was working Petrotrin, can't get food to feed the family. I know what he do if he thief, if he what, he end up in jail. This is the kind of living that these people want us to live in, because you see where they're allocating money for jail cells and things to extend on them police station. We see what these people are doing to us in Tobago and Trinidad. You say you're not closing down Petrotrin, you close it down, and now you're selling Petrotrin assets as scrap iron. That is what you're doing, selling it as scrap iron now in the country. All these wicked people, all your wicked people, anything that these people tell all you, don't believe them, they're very liar. Look at that. The cult leader, he bring up a false email into a parliament to bring down a government. And when done, the email was the biggest lie. If he could tell such lie, and how they're conspiring to kill a journalist and one thing to the next, if he could tell such a lie and end up in a position as prime minister, where you think them that he have over here working for him, where you think they're gonna do? People of Tobago, open your eyes, open your ears. People of Tobago, remember, we are in an undemocratic state, an unconstitutional state. And if possible, we are in a police state, because the commissioner of police now is Keith Christopher Rowley. People of Tobago, God, let we sit down and study what's going on with children. Let me study what's going on with the future of the children. I going on 60 next month. I not fighting for me, children. Me ain't fighting for me, young people. I'm fighting for all you. Because I see all you ain't gonna get no future. It's jail they want all you to go. They're putting out allocation for police station to lend out the jail for all you. They don't want all you to get nothing. They don't want no future for all you. Bringing a little dirty work here, there, and everywhere will not be nothing. After election, it will be worse if you don't change them. But you come in a forum to talk all you open all your political campaign down in the teapot, and you still have UNC name in your mouth. Like everywhere you go, you had to say something about UNC. Boy, wherever UNC and Kamala Possett business do you, boy, is a stain on you, boy. I'm sorry for you. You have to talk about them till you're dead. Because after all these years, you come, that is worse than a tabanka. You can't get over that tabanka there at all from the UNC.
Mike, yes, yes, sorry about that, sorry about that. Yes, indeed. Go ahead.
Right, and two, it has something right now playing out in our places, and like most people ain't seeing what going on, and there's a video I see on Facebook make me realize, you see the music right now, Lennox, the young people listening, you see that Trinidad music, the government part to play by the CNN playing on our airway. Because if you go to ask the average youth something simple concerning the politics in Trinidad today, them can't give their answer. They're not either engaged in some of these young people and them. And you know what I'm telling me? Why they don't want to hear nothing about politics, why they don't have time for that. But all them bad boy music and rebel music, yeah man, they singing it real cool. And when you watch the Just Cool, somebody eat man them selecting inside there and they Just Cool, showing them off and they instead of realizing that. You have to be something so better than that when you do the public. You are to some all how your pants below your ankle, your jaws up my chest. There's something that you see the music Lennox. These young people and them right now, the average young people, they ain't never down no good on Trinidad. Because what you can have party will be taking place in forestry. Watch how much heads, 100,000 of them, just be coming out to support them party and them and something for them to start for their life. They may want to do that. And you see them here in point, I see today that had some people collecting things for hand, and all kind of thing. And then when you realize them up to this day, the PNM up to them in that position, they have to be begging Tom, Dick and Harry. The PNM is the problem and they will continue to be the problem. And if all of them don't like it, the sycophants and them, all each other heart out according to Lennox Smith. All of them will pay the price when the time comes. You're going to understand.
Yes, indeed.
People of Trinidad and
indeed.
Tobago, where has your decency gone? Where has decency gone? The man cried tears for the Haitian children. He never seen suffering like that. And when they corner you and ask you for the money that you couldn't account for, arrogantly said, I don't have to account to anybody for that. And he was true. He account to nobody for it. Down in Deca Martin asking to make him prime minister. And there are people taking him seriously. Serious enough to want to cast their vote for individuals. I mean, if the crowd is like that, putting up people asking for your vote. Buy the figure and say, okay, I'm not eating you, I'm eating the figure.
Yes, people, all moralistic, but always for some pernicious and, of course, political advantage. He doesn't understand that his political currency has been tremendously devalued. Something like to buy a bread in Venezuela with Venezuelan dollars, you had to walk with a barrel of money. He doesn't understand that is the extent to which the PNM has not only been downgraded, not only has deteriorated, not only has been eroded, not only is, of course, pernicious and bad news for Trinidad and Tobago, but I want tonight to tell the African community and the young people, if you're smart at all along the East-West corridor, you will listen tonight, because I want to tell you that the conduct of Dr. Rowley and the ignoring of you, and of course, because he believes that you are a vote bank for the PNM, and therefore that small corner of the Western Trinidad and the numerous constituencies that exist there will always give them the edge, tenuous as it may. But of course, as a dictator, as an undemocratic individual, as an undemocratic party, as a group of individuals who who would consider any port for a storm. So 22 seat is like a landslide for them, and therefore it could be even 21. It's a landslide for them, as they, of course, invade the various institutions and believe that there are sufficient enough people in the society who will compromise their integrity, their honesty, their God, and of course their obligations to Trinidad and Tobago. And here I mean the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If he feels that they will do that there's a sufficient cadre to do so in perpetuity, I want to tell him that he thought the same thing about the Tobago. I want to tell Trinidad as well that Rowley thought the same thing of Tobago, that you like them, or put another way, they like you, or will remain in the bosoms of the PNM. Well, I want to tell you that is bowel talk. Bowel talk, because it's 14-1 in the tail. And I'm saying that the first constituency that must be called lost to the PNM whenever the election is called is Diego Martin West. You see, the man is such a blight that his first election, don't make him give you the impression that somehow he is infallible politically and otherwise. I want to tell you that. Because you will have to rationalize, you will have to reconcile why it is that the PNM got so much licks in 1986 to the 3-3. Why it is that they lost the election in 1995. Why it is they lost again in 20. Yes, indeed. Why would they have lost the election subsequently in 2000? Why? And why would they have lost handsomely in 2010? Why? So don't tell me that Rowley will, that is propaganda. That is for you to throw a blind eye to the fact that this is the history and that can't change. It's like a scent. It's constant like the Northern Star, and it is immutable like a scent. A scent can't change. Most you can do is exchange it, but it can't change. So let us not waste time with that level of propaganda. So he went to Tobago and tried to, of course, hoodwink and certainly try to impose a narrative for people to absorb, inculcate, assimilate. But nobody takes him on, as the caller rightly said, in Tobago. But I want to tell you that he is conscious, just as how we have proven that he was conscious that he was lying about the PNM not engaging in property tax, not engaging in the withdrawal of subsidies, and not closing down Petrotrin. Same pattern of behavior. So as we extrapolate and as we evaluate and as we surgically analyze the character called Rowley and his personality, we are getting a clearer picture that he cannot change. He cannot change. You see, character refers to your sense of right and wrong. Let me repeat. Character refers to a person's sense of right and wrong. Personality refers to, of course, what people see you to be. So you may have a pleasant personality. It doesn't mean to say that you will compromise your character, your sense of right and wrong. Where people can strike the balance, such an individual is usually lauded in any society, in any organization, or have a good sense of themselves. But when you have a character that you cannot discern between right and wrong, and you see wrong as right and right as wrong, yeah. And then, of course, you have a personality where people see you as horrendous, brutal, barbaric, And of course, consistently believing that you are some kind of narcissist on top of your misogynic or hater of women disposition and narrative and orations, then you know that that is trouble. And the first person that gave us a comprehensive, if not unconvincing, or I say unconvincing from the perspective that people were willing to take a chance with Rowley in 2015. But the first person to tell us that was, of course, and warn us. Now we know for sure that it was a sincere warning. I'm talking about the late Patrick Augustus Manning, the former Prime Minister, now deceased, of Trinidad and Tobago, and head of the PNM at that time. Let us waste time with that. That's a fact. And we need to remiss it. And I am saying so for the consciousness of the sycophants and the members, rank and file, along the east-west corridor from Carenage in the west to, of course, and therefore Diego Martin West, as we pursue a course of action that identifies Rowley as an alien to Trinidad and therefore an alien to wherever he lives, and as an alien to of course, the constituency of Diego Martin West. We need to focus. We need to get him out of the political arena and our faces, because he can only be a continuum of bad news. Bad news. But just in case tonight you don't believe me, just in case you pretend you don't understand, well, there can be no other ratification, what I consider to be confirmation, than any occasion associated with emancipation. And I take you back tonight to Emancipation Day. Not Emancipation Day, but an emancipation event hosted by Dr. Rowley in 2019. 2019, just about 3 or 4 years ago. 2019. And listen to what he has said, because I want you to, of course, juxtapose that and pit it against what he was saying when he was in opposition, when he went on the Beatum, and he said that the Beatum, a violent place, and it was violence, and of course the police were in their tails, of course, under the Kamala Prasad-Bissessa administration, of course. He said that the Beatum is a unique place with unique problems that requires unique solutions. That is clear. That is clear. Because in other words, I don't want you to analyze at all. I will do the analyzing for you. I will not only lead you to where you should be thinking, because it is common sense. And when you think about the common sense, you will know that I am acting in your best interests. If you say that, if he said that Beatum is a unique place with a unique problem, with unique people, and requires unique solutions, it means therefore that as opposition leader at the time when he said that, it means therefore that when he gets into government, if he becomes a prime minister as he is, then the problems there will be focused upon, and therefore those problems will at least be actively intervened upon in order, of course, to ameliorate and to improve. What has happened? Because he is prime minister, what has happened? You have to be a person who, of course, is resolved to constant, persistent punishment. Punishment. You are suckers for punishment if you do not see that he said that on the Beatum. And one expects that would be applicable to all Africans, because it was an African problem. And why we can say so? Because again, under Kamala Prasad-Bissessa, when she introduced, of course, the SOE in 2011, It was he, Rowley, who said that is only Africans are being rounded up and, of course, placed in detention at the time in order to address the spiraling out of control crime and criminality and the maiming of our citizens, whether it be through gang warfare or through normal criminal activities. Remember, we're talking in 2011. What does that tell you? Just in case it didn't happen under Kamala Persad-Bissessar, that marauding explosive situation. What happened with under Kamala Persad-Bissessar? It was almost unbearable because it would have been inherited by the Kamala administration since she was in office in part of 2010, but already in 2011 she instituted a mechanism to address the problem. Caused by clearly the PNM, she haven't inherited those problems. And of course, we could talk about a number of things that she inherited, just as how, of course, the PNM under Rowley would have inherited certain things. The only difference is that whilst, of course, Kamala Persad-Bissessar inherited, of course, the things that were sociologically and economically explosive. Rowley benefited from, of course, a reduction in crime. He benefited when he came into 2015 in, of course, a handsome treasury. And then, of course, typical, maybe he reminds me of the Sicilian fable, the mythology, when, of course, a leader was, of course, assigned to pushing a big stone, a rock, up a mountain, so as to get to the top. And if he would have reached to the top and have it by way of gravity, he would have ended his task. But every time he reached to the top, almost to the peak of the mountain, the stone simply evades him and gets back down. And he was doing that in perpetuity. Yeah. The Sisyphean fable. Yes, it is called, of course, it's Greek mythology, but very appropriate for this man. Because everything he touches, he reaches close. And next thing, it turns out to be shambolic. It turns out to be detrimental. It turns out to be a classic case of a cursed regime that's clearly anything it touches, because of course of the poor and the nefarious intent that drives the people to do things unconscious that are detrimental, of course, not only to what they say the objective of that action would have been, but to the people that are supposed to be the beneficiary of that. It turns out to be pain, ache, agony, and contrary to advancement and nation building. Yes, I thought it was important, of course, to lay the prelude. So, in 2019, Dr. Rowley was talking and laying the foundation that he is conscious of what is happening, what is wrong with the African community. That on the occasion of our Emancipation Day, a celebration exercise at the Diplomatic Center, where he invited, of course, people to attend. Let us go straight and hear what he had to say then. So you will understand this man is... It reinforces, of course, my argument that he knows what he's doing. But in fact, on the African community, after he would have gotten into office, ham, lamb, and jam he's eating. The whites, of course, Rome burns his own African community. And then, of course, in the 2020 elections, just before, he then tells us that he is an African and that he ain't no banana, totally contradicting what the intent of that basket of goods was, as was promoted by the UNC, suggesting to the nation that, listen, we are more congenial, we are more munificent, we are more altruistic, we are more philanthropic. But Rowley, in his usual toxic disposition, as we saw with those fake pieces of paper calling and suggesting and indicting and accusing a sitting prime minister of treason because he talked about conspiracy to kill a journalist. Well, that banana, and of course I am a proud African theater show, was exactly to do that, and you so foolish. And I'm not saying foolish here in terms of ignorance. I'm using it in a very loose way. So foolish here means that you know the man, you ought to know the man, and you take that and he catch you again and he is there now to give you pain. That is the man who closed down petrol train. That is the man who take away laptops from those who are most vulnerable in the African community. That is the man who said at Emancipation Day celebration hosted by him at the Diplomatic Center in 2019. You're going to hear it. He said that he is disappointed about the African. What does that mean? What he said on the BTM, what does that mean? It means that he is conscious. It means that as Prime Minister, I will do something about it because I now have the power. And instead he is using it, of course, to not only ignore that, but to, of course, engage in activities with our money that clearly is not only criminal, it's not only misbehavior in public office, but flies in the face of any human being with a conscience. You can tell me that you will try to orchestrate, even though you may have the notion, even though you may have information before you, but you must know that in a court of law, you have to have proof, and you pay a man $10 million to lie on Anand Ramnagan and Ramdeed in order to secure a conviction, because you want to show the same African, stay with me, I am more than what I told you I am, and I will, of course, set you free. But instead, he have them in bondage, and that was another bondage. It was similar, of course, to putting a chain, a piece of chain on an engine block and letting off the entire African community into the Gulf of Paria. That is what that was, and still is today. Let us go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Good night to you. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Why did this country like to remove people when the right thing forward?
Because those who are doing wrong and intend to do wrong have a more influence because of their toxic language. Because those who are doing right, knowing they're doing right, do respond. We have a duty, like what we are doing now, like what you are talking about now and what you are about to say, to make those persons who are doing wrong, like Rowley, and they understand that we know that they're doing wrong, and we will fight fire with fire. Go ahead, my friend.
Here we have this lady who has been presiding as a industrial court judge for the past 17 years.
Yes, 13 years, yes. Yes.
Judgment by this woman. She should have been given a lifetime thing for what she's been doing here, because she's been paying her dedication.
Yes. Yes, and all the trade unions accept that. Even at times they were up in arms against her for some decisions that she would have made. But that is in the cut and thrust of that kind of job. Yeah.
He has been making the right decisions.
Yes.
He's been doing the right thing for the people.
Yeah.
And there comes this kangaroo lady, and the next one is waiting the Chief Justice to remove the woman abruptly and put in some other lady. I don't know who she is, some TV or something to me. I mean, I find it shocking. But I'm hearing that a matter was supposed to come before with regard to the sitting president's husband, and that to be part and parcel. Like, it's all kind of conspiracy motion and things that come up. But again, this lady has not been tarnished by any kind of controversy, and I thought she would have gotten another serving up to stay there and oversee to keep, to judgment that was more than time.
Yes.
But we see these things playing out with this country. And I mean, maybe the TV really has to see what's going on when I'll be watching her very quickly. I see what she does. And furthermore, we have a prime minister in this country. What if there are some kind of crime talks with the opposition? But he don't want to figure in it, right? He say he don't want to be a part of it, right? He put in a team to do this. To talk about crime. But yet he jumping on a plane and going to prison to talk about what? He wasn't invited, he just got into that.
Yeah, he just intrude as an outsider, intrude. Yeah, insert himself. I mean, this man has no shame. Yes. Yeah. You don't know? Well, I have the press conference on tape of Graf Gonzalez, and all he said is that nobody will be ignored, suggesting, of course, members of the heads of government, etc., and their delegation. He said that nobody will be, of course, turned away. But Rowley name was never mentioned. It was, of course, the president of Brazil, the head of CARICOM now, Skerrit, and some representative from the United Nations, and I think one other significant individual. He, Gonzalez himself, being, of course, the chairman right now of the CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, and therefore in that capacity, he was confirmed to, of course, host that meeting in his country. But in other words, Rowley was never on the agenda, was never, invited. It was an option that he took when he ought to have done so. I said it this morning on the ground report, that because of his unique position, he should have made an intervention even before or while this is taking place because of his close relationship with Maduro. But go ahead, my friend. Sorry about that.
When the opposition said that he should have put a front with that.
Yes.
He targeted them and said that they're talking food. You talk already, you're talking foolishness. But you look at the fool now, because he's jumping on a plane and going somewhere he's not invited. You understand?
Yeah, and for the very thing, the opposition had asked him to do, which he ignored, but he goes because somebody else took the initiative. Man, this man is mad like hell. Yeah. He's bipolar. He going through. Yeah. He looking for photo op.
He's sitting down here and they told him to come on any crime talk, which he not serious at all. So he rather go there to talk what is it, the somebody show and to stay here and talk about crime. It's killing me, he national over here. Some people dying and he refused to go into that. This man not serious, he's not serious.
No, he was never serious. He was never serious. He's a rank opportunist. That's what he is. Despicable, incompetent, and will encourage criminal behavior, as we saw wherever he went in public life. There was some bubble connected to him. We have another one emerging right now before the Integrity Commission, and he said somebody targeted his whole life, whether it be landed, whether it be, of course, a whole commission of inquiry was initiated around him for, of course, those buildings in Arima that, of course, Manning said it was missing $5 million and it morphed to $10 million. And then, of course, if Manning had known about his involvement in the Greenvale flood-prone housing scheme, I'm sure that would have been another one that would have come to the fore. But he had his people protecting him. He was ring-fenced by them, and therefore Manning didn't know. But we know now, and therefore we must bring it to the fore.
Most of these stuff you get over on technicality, you know that.
Yes. Technically, he ought to have known.
In the teaching on technicality.
Yeah, he ought to have known.
We can see because these politicians, they have a different judgment that they judge them with. And we, me and you, the two in the book that we look. Then for them, then they come off with some kind of technical jargon in here and get away. So I don't know, I think he might be the third integrity commission with some kind of thing. Yeah, he was and then they would.
Well, I don't know. I have a different view. I'm saying that if something is wrong, you could do it as long as you wish to do. The problem with that is that over time, you will have to pay the price. And I suspect the time is coming pretty soon where he must pay the price. Go ahead.
The very they finally get his token stickers out there. You need to keep it here to this, especially this one, because we did before them several times, and you can tell me, all the time I keep on before them, and who's speaking to you and get to look on technicality.
And he talking blatant in your face. He's saying that is normal practice for people to recuse themselves in a cabinet and saying it in public. Literally indicting, or should I say inviting easy prosecution once he's before the court, because he has to explain what he mean by that. Just as how he said that he knew those youths were Al-Rari's children that were holding these high-powered rifles, and of course Al-Rari is yet to confirm that it was his children, but he, Rowley, say it was Al-Rari children. So we know what he's capable of, and it's just a matter of time. All right, my friend, thank you very much. Yes, it appears that that caller has gone. Yes, indeed. So very salient point. But let's go straight, of course, to Dr. Rowley, and let us prove tonight that he knew exactly what he was doing and saying when, of course, he pretended that he loved African youths in particular, and that people must do all what they can. And not being prime minister then, he was incapable. But now that he is prime minister, he has abandoned the entire exercise.
Ladies and gentlemen,
yes, indeed.
Participation seemed to go in circles because it began with blood, a loss of value of life. And today, we are well into the 21st century. And if one might be a little cynical, you might want to think that we are recreating an environment that we've known before, particularly for African people. Ladies and gentlemen, the color of our skin is never going to change. But that significant piece of biology has established itself as a marker for us. Racism is alive and well in the 21st century. And slavery, which we now commonly call human trafficking, is an item that's attracting our attention not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but around the world in the 21st century. Some of us who, towards the middle and end of the 19th and 20th century, we would have probably begun to think that that history was behind us and can be left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, this emancipation celebration that we started in Trinidad and Tobago very many years ago, I distinctly recall, I think it was in 2003 or 2004 thereabouts, there was a big event in our parliament, because there was a project that was started. It was a pilot project to focus on trying to prevent the young of the African population in the urban areas from going astray and going so far astray that their behavior could threaten the nation. That project required that the government of Trinidad and Tobago focus on the problems of the urban youth in Trinidad and Tobago, which were largely of African families.
Well, of course, let us put it in perspective, and of course, a timeline. When, of course, there was the 1818 scenario, the 1818 scenario consequential of the elections of 2001, that project was launched by the Manning administration, of which he was a part, and of course he is of course confirming. I remember that very distinctly because there was a project in Rock City, and they rehabilitated physically because they believe physical aesthetics improvement equals to a transformation of behavior. You had to be a jackass to believe that by itself will do that. In other words, there is a saying that you can throw pearls to swines and they will see it as hog food. You know what I say? So to say that you started a project that will, of course, improve the environment. Well, of course, in Laventille and in these places, there is a dire need for infrastructural improvement. I am saying so because Rowley has fallen victim since he came into government by that philosophy as well. Remember when he started, of course, the school improvement program? Where do you think that was? He started with, I think, about 12 schools in and around Laventille, St. Barb's, Hockett, Success, and a number of other schools, primary schools in particular. And all of them were painted their utility, their utility ability, let me put it that way, where people could use it. They could be much more salubrious, much more accommodating to human use, and of course wanting to gravitate physically. A well-painted classroom and a building. They change up, of course, the monograms and so on, and some of the mottos and all of that. But that by itself cannot change the population, because it's human beings you're talking about, and therefore there is an attitudinal change that requires, of course, a constant bombardment of positivity, so that when they inculcate and when they are exposed, they can now, of course, see the other side of the argument. They can see the other side of their behavior, and therefore commence the change that is required. Not a building, Rowley. You had to be a backside to treat with that, because there it was in 2019 emancipation. He is talking that hogwash about a project that he was part of with of course his former boss, that he said he went Likoto for. He had talked about money, but in his incarnation as prime minister now, he then, of course, started a beautification of schools. No, it is an attitudinal change that is required. And when the attitude is changed for the positive, they can appreciate a school. Because I'm sure if I go now and look at those schools, they would have been vandalized and returned to the original state that they were before they were improved with a fresh coat of paint. Fresh coat of paint. Understand? You have to talk about a teacher and commitment. You have to talk about parental commitment. You have to talk about, of course, the presence and the constant socialization of the children within the school environment and outside of the school environment. In other words, it is not even sufficient for a parent to see that the school is nice and that the prime minister paid attention to the physical appearance, and not, of course, to put those other mechanisms in place that would, of course, cause the parent to, on a consistent basis, on a persistent basis, to, of course, monitor what is happening in the school, come to parent-teachers meeting, etc. If you go to these schools now, you would see that the parents are no longer interested in, of course, coming to parent-teachers meeting where you get valuable information about your own child, but of course what is happening generally, so that you can make a contribution, so that you develop what is called a multi-symbiotic relationship. That is to say, all the stakeholders exist for their mutual benefit. And what is that benefit? Targeting that young child to, of course, be the best that he or she can be, as of course he grows up in the community, and of course participate in the socialization processes, whether it be by individuals or institutions such as the school and church. Such as the school and church. That is what you're talking about. So he is one-dimensional, as he is blinded on all other side, because this thing is about multifaceted and multi-dimensional. This is not 3D alone. This is 4D. It's people you're dealing with, and therefore the situation in Laventille remains the same, as if he made no intervention. He manning, as is the case with him today. So I'm not impressed, but I want you to recognize that he knows and understands the problem in these places, but as Prime Minister refuses to take the appropriate pro-action and of course the ameliorative responses that are required in order, of course, to make the intervention. And I am saying so not out of ad hominem or a guessing. I am saying so because I, Lennox Smith, invented the process, or began the process, of recognizing the multifaceted, multidimensional approach to, of course, the attitudinal change that is required. And therefore, when we created the MLIO program, the Mobile Laventille Improvement Organization, and of course subsequently after the PNM did its best to damage and to, of course, discontinue that program, and when of course I saw the old Rumban that is now today the Laventille Technology and Continuing Education Center, and I proposed that, of course, to the Pandey administration then, when of course Ganga Singh was the minister responsible for tertiary education, and he made me, of course, the advisor to a team, including of course those technical institutions run by the government, to develop that particular project. The concept was again all comprehensive, but from the perspective that it is the community must play the major role in order, of course, to make certain that the thing is the success, that not that I'm satisfied, but the experiment was certainly successful, because wherever MLIO school was, whether we were in the Fernandez compound, where we of course outlived our stay, and we went to Coconut Drive, and we went to Juman Drive, when the surrounding community, we didn't have to put a watchman. The surrounding community watchman the place for us. We have had, I can tell you a story where in the Coconut Drive area, where of course the Mova Central Government School, a primary school at the time, I think it still is, next door to us, just across the road, we had 13 computers in our facility, in the computer room. They had 3 or 4 over there. They broke open the blasted school and take all the computers, and next door had 13 computers. The doors are open, closed but not locked, and they never interfered with it. When was of course the coup? Our school was situated on Fernandez compound, and those who were vandalizing never entered or touched a lock or even the gate of the school, because the community felt part and parcel of it, and therefore it was theirs, and they know that they have to protect it, and that is what they did. They don't understand that philosophy. They don't understand, because they are total nincompoops and people who are so neophytic in their disposition. They now come Johnny come lately and believing that they have the solution to the problems of the community, and when they realize that this is overwhelming, as the case now, they then give up and would like to take back those things that they would have said in the past, but it can't come back. Age, and of course, smoke that goes up, don't come back. Okay, of course, we could be philosophical as much as we like. But the fact is that they have not been able to reach those young people who today are all over the place, and Trinidad and Tobago has now been relegated to to a Russian roulette environment where any number can play, where anybody could be a victim of crime and criminality. I'm going to show you tonight. It's a dangerous place. So they have not been able to think out. And as I've said, I will work for free under Kamala Prasad Bisesa, but these fellas, if they want Lennox Smith to bring his expertise, none of them could talk to me. None of them, they're afraid to sit down in a room with me and let's discuss, of course, these matters and what are the solutions to these young people. MILAP, MITAP, YTEP, GATE, Citizen Conservation Corps, Sub 50 program, waste of time, waste of blasted time. Because if that was effective, the problem that we're having now with, of course, runaway home invasion, runaway robberies, runaway killings will not have happened. So I know. I just have to measure it from that perspective. And none of them could argue against that. They would pretend and ignore it. But the reality is that young people and Africans in particular, African youths, are engaged, and Rowley recognized that in 2019, and as Prime Minister did nothing to preempt and to, of course, avoid the unrelenting chaos and merciless killings in Trinidad and Tobago today.
And as I stood up for that project, I was accused of racism.
Looking for platitudinous support. Looking for ingratiation.
Wasn't happening in the Chinese community or the Indian community or the Arab community. It was a problem in the African community where the African youth, by the tens of thousands, were going.
You know why he said that he was accused of racism? Because he looking for sympathy for his poor performance and his hands off as Prime Minister. He wants you to feel sorry for he. And he have the work. He have the position. He have access to the treasury. He has all the state apparatus. He can influence the private sector. And then tell us he was accused of racism. So therefore what? So that means you couldn't do anything? Well, of course, I see you use racism just in the 2020 elections to stay where you are, to tell us that you were stymied by being accused of being a racist. You are, but that does not obfuscate. It does not take away. It does not emasculate your role as Prime Minister. The office of Prime Minister and the access to resources to, of course, generate and engender the metamorphosis that is required. Paradigm shift. They do nothing. And I could talk with authority because I have done it in Laventil self on my own level. But if I had a national program, I'd solve that problem already.
And choosing violence and criminality as a way of life. And what is worse, that was coming right out of the breakdown of the families of the African population. And the time has come where this Emancipation Day ought not just to be a day for frivolity and wearing nice African clothes and walking in the street. The time has come for the Afro-Trinidadian population to use Emancipation Day, to focus and reflect and have serious conversations about where we are in a nation where we are underperforming. In a nation where we are underperforming. In a nation where we are underperforming. Sounds bad. These are the facts. Look at the level of violence which is commonplace in Trinidad and Tobago today. Look at the level of violence which is commonplace in Trinidad and Tobago today. Who is affected? Who is carrying it out? Who is defending it? Who is being ignored? Who is being ignored? Who is being ignored? I ask you, let 2019 be that year when we take a commitment, make a commitment that Trinidad and Tobago, its African population, will focus on being the best that we can be in a nation that we can all be proud of. Because
Nice speech. You get a round of applause. Nice speech. But that is banality. That is backward talk. That is ocious and irrelevant. That is self-praise. The fact is that the problem remains, and he has offered no solutions. Just say, let us do it, and that's it. You paint a school or two, and that's it. You have to be a backside. And there is something in sociology called, of course, the institutions of socialization. Institutions of socialization. And when these institutions break down, you have some serious problems. Of course, he went on to talk about, of course, the history of slavery, and the possibility existed that because of the lack of family cohesiveness, our children, our African children, have become victims, and therefore are marauding all over the place, wild, reckless, brutal, headless, and of course unconscious somehow of what they are doing. You have to be a backside. How you mean they don't know the difference between right and wrong? They know what is wrong. They know what is right. They know. But because they can get away with it, because they can, as typical children, they have the right to be delinquent, as, or should I say disobedient, as part of their growing up experience. There must be within the society a sufficient monitoring mechanism to cause them eventually to get back on the straight and narrow when they would have deviated. What do I mean? I say that it is family, therefore the parents, the school, the church, the police, the prison system, and the other institutions that come under the portfolio of, let's say, the Ministry of Community Development, the Ministry of Social Development. All of them must play a preemptive and a critical role in making certain that they influence directly and indirectly the direction in which these young people take, and the path that they take because of monitoring. That is why, as a first step, having regard to how far and how almost unreturnable the situation is, that there is a need now to make parents be responsible for their charges or those that they brought into the world. And therefore, one of my suggestions that I will be sending, of course, to the discussion initiated by the UNC, not by him. I've given up on him and the PNM a long time ago, because they are totally depraved and have collapsed in terms of ideas, in terms of paradigm shift, in terms of creativity, and in terms of addressing the present problem for sustainable amelioration and advancement into the future. So I've given up on them. And as I said, a Kamala Prasad Bisesa administration will see me working for free. With them, they'll pay me millions for me to give of my experience. And I can talk with authority. None of them, Rowley and his entire cabinet could discuss the question of these kinds of youths and their, not only the solution, but how do we engage them? No, none of them. They don't know. They were too aloft. They came in on a PNM chariot, if you want to call it that gives them ham, lamb, and jam. Automatic access to fame, fortune, and rubbing shoulders with the shakers and movers in the society and captains of industry. But in terms of doing their job and exhibiting their responsibility, they are ignorant, total ignoramus. And I can talk with authority and I could tell them as it is, because it is a pellucid fact. None of them, all of them cumulatively, cannot exhibit or unleash or unveil the metamorphosis that is required, the change that is required in order to address the problem in urban communities and in African settled areas in particular. None of them. I could talk with assurance and with authority. And when I give you, of course, as I said, the first thing I would do, because it has gone so far, almost to a point of no return, you have to deal with the parents. So in addition to all of the nuts and bolts on the ground, timely and real-time intervention, you have to deal with, of course, the parents. And therefore, I would propose parental responsibility legislation at the level where if a child commits a crime that, or an act that will be considered to be a crime if he or she was an adult before or after the age of 18, but they commit the crime before 18, so therefore they are minors, then of course they are seen in a different way. And therefore, in such circumstance, whether they cut somebody, they rob somebody, then all two parents must come to court at minimum, so that they will be much more circumspect, they will be much more attentive, they will be much more conscious of their role and responsibility and monitor the child every move. Whether it be on the road, whether it's going to school, coming from school, whether it's school, etc., they will come to parent-teachers meeting, etc. But there are other mechanisms, of course, to use, but I'm just saying, which we have used, so much so that the former Prime Minister, Robinson, was so impressed that every month he used to visit MLIO to participate in the parent-teachers meeting, because there's over 300 and counting. A whole ecology of people were there with various interests to make certain that on the child, his or her development is secured. Secured. That is the level. So them fellas can't talk to me. I've been where they only dreaming to be if they could dream that far. So I'm not impressed. But I want to show you how deceptive they are, and that they pretend to know. And I want to say, if you are Prime Minister and you know, then why it is that you have not acted to save these young people from, of course, themselves. Why? It's clear they are about themselves, and of course the perks and the salaries, and of course the opportunity to thief and to dispossess those very young people of their laptops and their food packages, and the poor people, and utilizing every opportunity as an emergency, such as, of course, natural and artificial. Natural in the case of the COVID, artificial in the case of thieving people's mattress money, and of course, coining measures to say that it's some untoward, some criminal issue of money laundering, and of course, people who are engaged in drugs, so as to thief the people money from their mattresses, because they simply don't want to and don't trust the banks. But that's another matter. Let's get on with Rowley's consciousness as to what has to be done, and what he said when he was opposition and now Prime Minister. He threw his hands up in the airs and twiddle and fiddle.
Trinidad and Tobago is easily the most attractive, the most beautiful, the nation with the most potential of all the world.
We know that.
But let us not for 1 minute believe that this is not a problem for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let us not contribute to our own situation by not doing the best we can in nation building, in family building, in community building in Trinidad and Tobago.
I've said before, I repeat, this government is a narco government. Hard-working citizens are ruthlessly robbed and beaten on the streets. Or while conducting legitimate business, the government cannot act because they are afraid of being exposed by the gang leaders. Home invasions, a horrible fact of life. With merciless thugs attacking law-abiding citizens who spent decades building their homes, their families, their communities, and the nation, and this government refuses to enable law-abiding citizens to get legal firearms to defend themselves. Crime has created an undeclared civil war in once peaceful TNT. We are the world's most dreadful non-war killing zone. The only other place you're seeing that kind of killing zones, death fields as well, where there's open armed conflict war. Gaza and Israel, Putin and Ukraine and Russia and so on. Where there's open warfare, but we are killing fields. And as JJ says, the young ones are the ones who are the ones being wiped out. A whole lost generation. And I want to call on this government, you know, I have this big fat book here. Probably wondering what this is. This was the Ryan report that my government commissioned when we had problems with the crime, when I was Prime Minister. Look at the size of this report. Many of the recommendations we have implemented already. But when they came in, they let go the wheel, they dumped the book, they threw it away in the dustbin. Today they need to pick it back up and look at the recommendations that we can share. So when you come to tell me about crime talk, something like, look, I will meet you anywhere, anytime, any place, any day, Rowley. Anywhere, and I'll even take over the pavement from Rudy to and meet you on the pavement as well.
Or approach east, want to talk about party elites and meet them outside on the pavement. See these boots I'm wearing? We the farmers of Tobago and Texas, we call them shit kickers, right? And I'm hoping that I'll meet Dr. Munilal today, but I haven't met him so far.
We are not afraid of you. We have the plans, we have the policies, we have the programs, we have a track record.
People, of course, it is 14 minutes past 10 o'clock. Of course, we have come to the end. We will continue tomorrow. Well, you got finally Miss Bernie from Tobago today. And, of course, there are much more to come by, and I trust that, of course, tomorrow night we will continue, of course, with this. We will start with Dr. Rowley's hypocrisy and his illusionment and his deception of himself. He is so deceptive and so illusionary that he eludes himself because nobody listens to him, nobody takes him serious, but somehow he will continue to bellow and, of course, utilize, abuse our treasury and our resources to satisfy that. But at the end of the day, like Tobago, 14-1 in a stale, after, of course, being, of course, in a state of engaging in futility, the attempt, of course, to deploy the EBC to carry on his anti-democratic, nefarious, wicked agenda. But at the end of the day, the people, just as in Trinidad, must decide. And the first target is to get rid of that alien, get rid of that outsider to Trinidad, to call Keith Christopher Rowley or in, of course, the Diego Martin West constituency. That's the first stage. The first call must be there. The man is totally toxic and totally inimical to Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore we must resist, and we must, of course, tell him where to get off eventually. So tomorrow, of course, we will start with that, and I'm sure more will get an opportunity to share in some of the solutions, as I want to really, truly be able to make my input because I did in fact make a contribution to that particular document that was of course compiled and put together by the late professor who of course put that document together from UE. We spent quite a lot of time looking at some of the practical solutions, some of the practical experiences, and eventually, of course, that was he got $1 million for it. I got nothing, but of course, but I have long reserved that is my portion, being of course able to contribute to the resolution of the problem. And you will see, of course, that when of course we decided as a community to treat with the problem in 2005. In 2005, not 2000, 2010 came, 2010 came later, 2005, when we went up to Mayaro, and of course we put a document together. I think it's a 50-page document as well, addressing the problem. I will bring all of that to you so you will understand that it is upon the community, the resolution to the problem of crime and criminality, because those young people come from families and they come from, of course, neighborhoods, and all of them are nestled in the community. And therefore, if you have community activists that are so conscientious and bring, of course, direct, real-time and on-time solutions, then, of course, the community will have no choice but to respond, because, of course, they will be monitored by the community itself. A wonderful concept, a wonderful disposition. But of course, for Rowley and they, is like throwing pearls to swine. And I'm not prepared, of course, to waste my pearls to these swines, these hogs, these pigs, these, of course, political kobos who see only political aggrandizement and advancement. And the reason d'etre for being in government is to stay in government, so as to abuse, misuse, and engage in criminal conduct that is despicable and unacceptable and wicked and nefarious. That being as it may, of course, let me just say that it is the UNC is the solution to the problem of Trinidad and Tobago, the problems of Trinidad and Tobago, not just crime and criminality, but the economy, etc., as we have examined in the past and will continue so to do in the future. So people, yes indeed, we have come. Don't forget, of course, tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Mikey, and myself, as we continue, of course, to ensure that we look at the problems of the state critically. Don't forget, of course, I like that people are already familiar with the numbers, but let me just remind you that you can't call me now. We're coming to an end, but of course, my apology if I didn't remind you, but the number to call here tomorrow night, 337-6940, 337-6940, and then, of course, to assist us with our Christmas hamper, to assist us with our Christmas hamper, and of course any assistance that you feel that we can bring to you, having regard to what you have been hearing, both on the ground report and on this live every night, except Friday, of course. 336-6594, 336-6594. I want to thank, of course, all of those who have been making contributions, and of course, I think one of the calls from the United States tonight is in connection with a contribution to be made to the efforts that we have been doing across the board. Notice we act as a government. A government is multifaceted, multidimensional, and that is how the problem must be. I cannot, in all conscience, feed you with information and you're hungry. No. And that is what, of course, the live sports was all about. Even though, of course, I had no input there, but I was in the latter stage recruited by Anil Roberts. But by that time, the bacchanal with the present Prime Minister saying that the monies doesn't worth the output. And so, of course, the Prime Minister then, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, stopped the program. But it was a program that would have been a good substitute, if not an addition to the MLIO initiative, because MLIO was dedicated to the Laventil question, the live sports was dedicated to the national question, and of course it had several components that we could have identified with, and therefore the problem of our young people today, minus Rowley and the PNM intervention, we would have been well on our way to solving it. But now we are still below zero. And we are in the minus stage. We are yet to reach the plus stage because there is no advancement. There is no indication that problem could be solved soon until, of course, the UNC gets into office. So, yes, indeed, the solution has to be what? The UNC. When it comes, of course, to 2025 maximum, you must do your duty and responsible. Clearly, the PNM has no idea as to what is to be done in order to address the problems of this country. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. So don't forget, of course, tomorrow morning, Andy, Mike, and myself will continue, of course, with these and other matters of a national and should I say a community and other nature. Let me see if I could go out with something that you would be familiar with. Otherwise, of course, we take cognizance of the Christmas season. Whilst we have to focus there as well, but we must know the albatross, the elephant in the atmosphere is, of course, the PNM, and we need, of course, to identify them as such and to make certain that they know, we know, so that they cannot, or they will reduce their efforts to try to continue to hoodwink, deceive, and to stay in office unmeritoriously. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. Bye-bye.
Time to go, time to go, time to go, it's time to go. Now it's the time for Rowley to go. It's only color, it's time to go. Time to go, time to go, time to go, it's time to go. Now it's the time for Rowley to go. It's only color, it's time to go. Treasury, a tax paying man can get nothing for free. Billions man from the treasury, a tax paying man can get nothing free. Trinidad and Tobago, please open your eye, cause the truth in your face, Rowley could only lie. Time to go, time to go, time to go. Now is the time for Rowley to go. It's only Kamla could save Tobago. Look, Rowley gave us promises to the sky, but I support in UNC till the day that I die. Rowley gave us promises to the sky, but I support in UNC till the day that I die. There's only anti-Kamla could come and save we. So go out and vote. We vote in UNC. Time to go, time to go, time to go. It's time to go. Look, now is the time for Rowley to go. It's only Kamla could save Tobago. Look now.
It's your boy Danny Popo here. All you come out and vote. It's UNC we bring it back. So there we go. Rowley had to go, boy. Rowley had to go. Rowley had to go, boy. Rowley had to go. We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley had to go, boy. That man has to go. We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley had to go, boy. The man has to go. Rowley had to go, boy. Rowley had to go. Rowley had to go, boy. The man had to go. We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley had to go, boy. The man has to go. Everywhere I go, I see pain and misery. Everywhere I go, I see pain and misery. How could you put him back to run this country? We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley had to go, boy. That man has to go. We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley had to go. I say the man has to go. When Manning closed down Caroni, they was all laughing. When Manning closed down Caroni, they was all laughing. Now Rowley closed down Petro Train and they all crying. We bringing back cabal to save Tobago. Rowley has to go, boy. The man has to go. We bringing back cabal.
Jano, Jano, hit me now. Judgment morning, I by the gate and I waiting, because I begging the master, give me a walk with Peter. If I some sinners coming, with them I go be dealing, because the things that they do me, I want to fix them personally. Peter wait, Peter look Cecil Rhodes by the gate. Peter look the Englishman, we send Cecil Rhodes to Africa land. Peter take Drake, take Rowley, but leave Victoria for me. Peter, I just don't care what you say, but Mussolini he can't get away. Why?
This is my time for money.
I'm burning and I'm burning and I'm burning and I'm burning. Blazing.
This is your time for money.
I'm burning and I'm burning and I'm burning and I'm burning.
Fire coming.
Peter, you don't know the pressure that I undergo from these madman and woman. I feel the full weight of the hand. They need the oppressed law. They never care about the poor. Peter, these people had a day. Well, now it's time for Stalin to play. Peter, wait, I say Peter, wait. Peter, look Ian Smith by the gate.
Money.
Peter, I don't want you to make fuss. Remember, I want Christopher Columbus.
Money.
Peter, look the English woman who on South Africa refused to put sanctions. Peter, I just don't care what you do, but Reagan going in the fire too.
Money.
Why?
This is my time for money. Peter, keep the fire blazing.
Signores, I must tell you about a little trick that Senior Santa Claus has played on me. Okay, maybe I was being too greedy to ask him for a big present. But my goodness, look at what Senior Santa Claus has given to me. See? The hat I got for Christmas is too big. The It is nice, but my sombrero is too big. If you wonder why I shiver, I fell 3 times in the river, 'cause the hat I got for Christmas is too big. But ring the bells and beat the drum. Ring the bells and beat the drum. I'll ring the bells to be polite. But if I see that Santa Claus, I'm gonna start a fight. See, the hat I got for Christmas is too big. It is nice, but my sombrero is too big. Can't tell one thing from another. I got married to my brother, 'cause the hat I got for Christmas is too big. But ring the bells and beat the drum. Ring the bells and beat the drum. I'll ring the bells, but I feel sick, 'cause Mr. Santa Claus, you played on me your dirty trick. See, Senor Santa Claus, the hat I got for Christmas is too big. It is nice, but my sombrero is too big. When I walk on Frederick Street, you can only see my teeth.